You're listening to the Brown Sign Project podcast.
Do you spend hours creating your rotas and then spend days constantly adjusting them? We have the solution. At Staff Savvy, we specialise in shift schedules and timesheet solutions for visitor attractions. Easily manage multiple complex teams of permanent, casual, freelance and volunteer staff across different locations and disciplines. With fast communication features, automatic compliance tools, training management and simple timesheet tools, Staff Savvy has been used and trusted by organisations such as V&A Dundee, the South Bank Centre and the Royal Albert Hall, with great cost-saving benefits. Visit us at staffsavvy.com/Brown Sign Project to learn more and schedule a demo of our magic rota button.
Hello and welcome to the Brown Sign Project, the podcast that gives you exclusive access to inspirational people that makes the tourist attractions what it is today. I'm Carlton Gadjadar.
And I'm Carly Strawn. In the final episode of this series, we're excited to bring you a conversation with the Director of Visitor Engagement at St Paul's Cathedral, Sandra Lynes Timbrell.
Sandra has always had a desire to share her love for cultural and heritage sites, and in our chat we discover how important operations are in bringing attractions to life.
In this series, we've been having one eye on the future, and we've been finding out how our guests feel about technology integration in the tourism and attractions sector. Sandra's going to share with us how she recently spent time with some people who've opened her eyes to new possibilities, new types of digital engagement, and how it works alongside more traditional in-person experiences. And of course, we hear some top tips on how to get into and get on in our industry.
A massive thank you needs to go out to our season sponsors, Staff Savvy and Retail Integration. And now, let's go and have a chat with Sandra. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, no matter where you are. Welcome to the Brown Sign Project. We have another fantastic guest on. But before we do, I guess, hello Carly, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. We're all boiling because it's getting into the summer now. We're not as warm as Dubai, Carlton, but we're getting there.
I heard it's very hot in the UK, but yeah, Dubai's hot as well. So less about us. Let's talk about the guests. That's all. We've got the lovely Sandra on. Hello, Sandra. Welcome to the show.
Hello, both. Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Oh yeah, we are so excited to have a chat with you about your career and what you've done and kind of how everything's all tied up to where you are today. But before we do that, can you give us a quick introduction about you, what you do and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So currently sitting at my kitchen table with the garden doors wide open because it's 24 degrees here in London, which is like really hot for us. But I know, Carlton, to you, that's absolutely nothing in Dubai, but there we go. But yeah, my career. So I'm currently Director of Visitor Engagement at St Paul's Cathedral. So I've been there for just over 3 years now. I started during lockdown, which is a whole other podcast. But previous to St Paul's, I was at English Heritage, Museum of London and Shakespeare's Globe. But at St Paul's, I've got all of the commercial operations, so sales, ticketing, marketing, visitor experience, security, collections. So it's quite a wide remit. There are 7 departments under my portfolio. But it's all the teams that interact with the public on a day-to-day basis, be that front-facing, selling tickets or showing people around, or just trying to persuade people to come and visit us.
That's amazing. You said something quite interesting. The one that I really picked up on is you said about like security, and I think we sometimes forget that they're a visitor service.
Yeah,
I think sometimes maybe security teams forget they're also a visitor service, but
I hope not. It's really interesting because wherever I've ever worked, security has been one of those kind of hot potatoes that gets passed around, either between like somewhere like facilities or works, as we call it at St Paul's, or it will go to visitor experience. It will kind of sit somewhere else, and no one quite knows what to do with it in a way. I've never really been anywhere where it's been a standalone directorate, but I really love having security under my portfolio because I think that exactly what you said, Carly, it is a visitor facing, it's one of the most important visitor facing roles that we have at St Paul's, and I would argue probably at most places across the attractions industry. They are usually the first people that you meet. They're the people that are being asked to keep everybody safe. They're the people that we are relying on to present that first face of whichever organisation you're coming towards. And also making sure that the staff and the volunteers and the visitors all feel safe. So it's such an intrinsic role. We work so closely with, certainly at St Paul's, with the City of London Police, a little bit with the Met Police, but with counter-terrorism, and with our contract providers, just to make sure that the security team really do feel that they are part of the St Paul's family, but also that people who are coming to St Paul's in whatever format feel that they are being looked after in the right way.
That's brilliant. Really, really interesting. It's always interesting to me to see the different makeups of what teams sit where. I think it's really vastly different. Really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes being on the senior leadership team, when we sit there and we have our executive meetings and we talk about, we're going through a workforce plan at the moment where we're thinking about where certain departments should be sitting. And actually, security is the one department I always fight. I fight for all my departments, I should say, but security is the one department I say I think it's absolutely key that it stays under visitor experience, because I think if you tuck it away elsewhere, it ends up being something that it has to be that front facing.
Yeah, amazing. So you named a few places that obviously you've worked in your career so far. What got you started into attractions? Like, what did you always intend to work in attractions, or what got you involved?
Oh, well, the age-old story, I wanted to be a curator when I grew up. Because you see it on all the films, and I've always been really interested in history. I'm a complete history geek. And when I was growing up, I thought, what could I do that is around history, the stuff that I enjoy? And I had an uncle that worked at the Natural History Museum. He was I suppose we call it a visitor experience assistant now, but at the time, I think it was called a warden or something like that. And he was showing people around, and I used to go there and see him and think, what an amazing job. You get to talk to people all day about some really cool stuff. And he would come home full of these exciting stories of people he'd spoken to. So it always felt like something I'd be interested in, but I thought curation would be the route I went down. So went off, did a bachelor's degree and looked to do an MSc in paleopathology and osteology, because I wanted to look after dead people.
Wow,
Wow.
Yeah,
very specific degree.
well, except I didn't get to do it, and that's where it all kind of goes off. It was one of those moments where I really wanted to look after dead people. Basically, I wanted to study bones, study ancient diseases, find out kind of like the sociology around the people who had been before us, had lived before us. And as I was looking to look for these master's courses, the fact I didn't have a BSc, the fact I didn't have an A level in a science was really going against me. And the everything kept coming back is that I'd have to go back and do an A level in biology or something, or do an access course, and I don't have the time or the money to do that. So it took some time out. I was doing graduate training at John Lewis, which I knew wasn't for me, but it was one of those things I thought you need to do to keep the money coming in. And I took some time out to go volunteering at the Verulamium Museum. And I was still thinking, okay, I'll be a curator, but I'll be a different kind of curator. And they were going through a refurbishment. So I went in to support the curatorial team, packing up and de-accessioning some of their objects. But whilst I was there, I was asked to go into various other places. So I was asked to, support the schools and family learning team while school groups were coming in. I was asked to support, get on the phones and take group bookings. I was asked to go on the front desk. And at the end of my placement, I sat down with the director and I said, I've really enjoyed the variety. And he went, you should be in operations. And it was the first time that anyone had ever said to me that there was this thing called operations that I could be part of. And it really kind of set me thinking about what my career path could be and where I could go, because I love the idea of being a part of very, very different things. It opened my eyes and I started looking around for different kinds of masters. So I went, in the end, I did a master's degree in heritage management at Sheffield. And that was an amazing course. And it led me to my first role at English Heritage. But it wasn't something that, I thought by this point I must be doing this role at this place.
That's incredible. I love the idea that, and I think we've all probably, those of us who are a little bit later in our careers, who will be told, there's this thing that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And actually you'd be really good at it, and you're like, wow, how have I got to this age or this part of my job and never didn't know that there was a word for that, or didn't know that that was a thing that people do. Really,
that actually happened to me when I was doing my masters. I didn't understand the word of customer experience, and I was like, we'll just do customer service, in attraction. But there's this whole thing about customer experience. I'm like, why did I not know of this at all? And then it was at the end of my dissertation that I found it. I was like, I haven't freaking laugh. And I was like, I'm going to have to rewrite my whole dissertation because it looks like I plagiarized everything, but I didn't everyone.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did.
Amazing. Now I do have one question to ask you before we talk the next proper question, and that is, have you ever watched the TV series Bones?
Boats?
Bones.
Oh, Bones! I think there's a helicopter flying overhead. Sorry.
I will say I do have a very northern accent, for those of you who don't know. And any word that has the O noise in it is very difficult to understand what I'm saying.
It was the
helicopter or not.
We are on the flight path between Battersea and wherever they go to in the south. So I like to think I'm Shiv from Succession, and there's my private helicopter coming to get me. The reality is that's not true. I've seen a couple of episodes of it, but not all of it. But when I worked at the Museum of London, I did do a course, an osteology course with Yelena, who's the osteology curator there. Just because I really wanted to, because that little part of me still hasn't gone away. So and I go to some really strange pathology lectures sometimes as well. So
no, that's awesome. That is so good. That actually kind of leads me to my next question. Reid, talking about your school. So what you studied, how has that kind of affected or prepared you for your career today?
I don't think it has, in a way, to be honest with you. It goes back to what you were saying just now, Carly, is that I don't think anyone, certainly from where I was at school, anyone ever really sits down and says, what are you interested in? Oh, this would be a good career for you. So when I did normal GCSEs, I think most people do, and then A-levels with 16th century European history, English literature and sociology. And I did the first two because I was really interested in them, and the third one because I had to pick a third. And I thought that sounds interesting, let's do that. And when I was looking for work experience, I ended up in the Nationwide Anglia Building Society behind John Lewis in Oxford Street, because when I said I like history, no one knew what to do with me. So I ended up very, very sadly processing mortgage applications. It was the worst. Oh gosh, it was horrible. But I don't know is the short answer to that question. What I do know is that when I went on to do my degree, I chose a degree based on what I liked, but also where I thought it'd be a little bit glamorous. So I did ancient history and archaeology in Manchester. It was the early 90s, showing my age. So, it was Manchester in the early 90s. What a place to be. But also I think I thought I was going to end up a bit like Indiana Jones or something, and doing some really cool, archaeology somewhere.
I did wonder how long it would take us to say Indiana Jones. I'm really glad you did it first.
The reality was I ended up watching Time Team and being in a wet trench as like Manchester, and realising that, the glamour, it wasn't quite there. It wasn't what I expected. But I really enjoyed that course. It's an amazing course, taught me a lot. But I still wanted to do that kind of look at, as I say, the kind of paleontology, the human side of things, which I think actually plays quite well to where I am now and the job that I do, because it's just not dead humans, it's live humans, happily. But when I ended up doing the master's degree after that, little period of reflection, I did heritage management, and that was really practical. And it was all about conservation philosophy and marketing impact, and understanding the footfall of, footfall versus customer experience, the types of conversations we're still having at the moment. Do you sweat the asset, or do you actually prioritize the visitor experience? So I don't think I'd ever thought long term when I was studying, and I know for a fact that no one had ever sat me down and said, this is what you're good at, this could be the type of career path that you go down. But it all feels like, in a bit of a hippie way, the universe guided me, or it's all lots of happy little accidents that set me on the path that I'm on now.
And that's a common theme that comes out in the conversations that we have, is that a lot of what seems like when you're younger and you're looking at other people's careers, is there seems to be so much strategy. And actually, I think for those of us who've been through that and are now looking back, is going, actually, a lot of it is happy accident. A lot of it is meeting somebody at a point in your life, or doing a specific job at a point in your life, or somebody else leaves and you get to do that job. And it's so much just taking the opportunity that is put in front of you, I think, at that point.
Yeah, exactly that. Taking the opportunities, meeting people, as you say, you know, having the courage as well, at certain points, to think that feels like a really big thing to do, but actually I'm sure I can do that because I've done that and that in the past. And also, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a bit later on in the podcast, but having those people around you that encourage you and support you in those right ways. And I think the most interesting people don't know what they want to do. The most interesting people don't have a set plan. And I'm not that kind of person to sit there and think in 5 years' time I have to be. I hate those type of interview questions because I just don't know.
Yeah, it's like the age old, what, you know, why do you want to work here? And it's like, well, you know, if my option was sitting on a yacht in the Bahamas for the rest of my life, I'd probably be doing that.
Going back to my ship and Succession ambitions, clearly option 1, super yacht, private jet, helicopter. Option 2, St Paul's Cathedral is a really good close second.
Yeah, is that sometimes, you know, the not sitting on your super yacht and on your private jet, you know, you can just do some other things and that's all right.
I get to do cool things too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to ask you like an interview type question. It's a bit deep. I know, I'm so sorry, but I think it's going to be quite an interesting one to answer. And the question is, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? I know.
No, I think it's a really good question. And I think the answer is because I am a history geek, because I love it, because I am absolutely, every single day that I go in, and I do, obviously I have moments where I think, you know, I'll sit in 2-hour strategic risk workshops and think, oh my goodness, this is not what I thought being in heritage was about. But actually, when you strip it back, I am so fortunate to have worked in some of the places that I've worked, to have been in some of the situations I've been in. And my why, my motivation is that I am part of the history of something. I am part of the custodianship of some really important buildings, some really important sites, some really important things that I have been lucky enough to ensure their continuity and sustainability and stability for this period in time, and to hand it over to somebody else. And I think that I get really worried that people see things like history as really boring, or people see what we do in attractions as not being relevant, or you know, a little bit frivolous or a little bit fluffy. And actually, I think it's absolutely core part of who we are as people. Education is a right, it's not a privilege. History is part of our shared stories. Only by creating spaces to have conversations, to share stories, to make memories, do we open up who we are as people, talking to each other about firing children's imaginations, about understanding stories about how there is more that joins us than divides us. So I think my why is being able to be in these amazing places and enabling, or trying to enable, other people to enjoy those places as much as I do.
That's amazing. I think it's interesting because we've asked that question obviously to a fair number of people, and I think when we put that question out to people, there's an assumption that everyone is motivated in the same way or by the same thing, because you know what motivates you, and it's, you know, you don't always, it's not easy to put yourself into someone else's shoes sometimes. No. Everybody's answered that so differently.
Really?
Yeah, and it's honestly really fascinating. And I think you know, when you've, especially when you've worked with big teams, and you know, both of you would recognize this, when you've had lots of people that work for you and you try and motivate people, is how differently motivated people are. You know, some people want money, some people want praise, some people want days off, some people want, you know, everyone is so motivated in such different ways. And I think it's interesting because we think of motivation, you know, in quite simple terms sometimes, but for some people it is, you know, a big part of who they are is
Yeah.
getting?
And I think, obviously on a day-to-day basis, obviously the money, it's nice to earn money to do a job that you do. It's
It
on a
helps.
day-to-day, it does help, yeah, to be able to have a roof over your head and all those sorts of things. And on a day-to-day basis, you are, this is really big macro stuff. On a day-to-day basis, there's some micro things that kind of motivate you to get through the day, like having a glass of wine at the end or something like that. But on the whole, and I think, as you were saying, Carly, I think there is when I've got such massive teams, 7 departments, I've got over 80, 90 people within my teams. You can never understand what every single person's motivation is for being there. And it's really difficult sometimes. We're sitting in a training session the other day with a group of people, understanding that they're there for very different reasons. They're working at St Paul's for different reasons. They hear what I'm saying in different ways because of their motivations. But if we can all try and get down to that knob of understanding that, I think at the crux of pretty much all of what we do is making sure that we are all happy, that everyone is coming into the cathedral is happy, in whatever guise that takes, whether that be having a good experience or making sure the ticketing's working properly or having, a really good marketing campaign, all of those things. That makes for a happy life, and that makes for a happy environment that you're working in.
Introducing Meridian Experience from Retail Integration, the leading multi-channel ticketing, retail and membership system for visitor attractions. Working with visitor attractions for over 25 years, Retail Integration have developed the ultimate solution that enables some of Ireland's leading visitor attractions manage every aspect of their business, from ticketing and admissions to merchandising, food and loyalty programs in one single system. Customer experience is at the heart of what we do. Contact us today and let Retail Integration help you to exceed visitor expectations. We listen, we develop, we deliver.
What would you say, challenge-wise, have you found working in the industry? And do you think, based on kind of where you are now, that we could be doing things better to lessen those challenges that people kind of face getting into the industry or staying in the industry, and what might have happened?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, we've kind of touched on is understanding career paths and understanding that some of that operations is a valid career path and what that might mean, and that some people are really motivated by data and ticketing and other people aren't, and that's fine too. But it's other people are motivated by making sure there's good customer experience, and how we can ensure that people get that there are these operational paths or strategic paths or paths around governance which support these amazing buildings, these amazing places, these attractions, these sites we're all working in, that isn't just about being a curator, that isn't just about being a working in schools and family learning or something. There are very valid career paths which are also very exciting for people, and I think that the work that you guys are doing, the lecturing that you're doing is showing younger generations coming up that there are various ways of getting into the attractions industry that isn't just about making sure you've done a degree in a certain subject. You can do lots of the things and get through. But I think we've got a long way to go. And I one of the things I always say at work is that from an operations perspective, I still don't think it's seen as a valid subject. A lot of people think they can do operations, and they will think for you in a meeting. I can see you smiling. You've been in that situation where they will think for you in a meeting, and they'll talk it through, and you'll sit there as the ops manager going, but you haven't thought about this, or you haven't thought about that, or the cog that turns here that affects the bigger cog that turns over there.
Just the one that always fascinates me is the people who assume that human beings will do what you expect any given day.
Yeah. Put the sign there and they'll go that way. No, they won't.
No, they will. They will. No, they won't.
They will never read no one ever reads the signage. No, people will come up and move the barriers. People will walk past a member of staff, even if that member of staff is staring them right in the face.
Yeah.
And there are, I think, we all met, I think, through the visitor experience forum. And And I always think of that's like a self-help group for operational people, right? Is that we're all been in those positions of going, oh, I did this thing today, and people just really didn't behave in the way I anticipated.
I was having a conversation the other day about something, and one of my colleagues said, oh, the visitors will just get it. And I was like, no, they won't. You will need a 48-foot flashing pink neon sign. And even then, they might miss it.
Yeah, and then they'll think it's an art installation.
Exactly, yeah, that'll be a whole other conversation. So I have challenged this, to be serious, I have challenged it in meetings and said, I would not presume to walk up to the head of finance and tell him how to get an invoice out. I would not presume to walk up to schools and family learning and say, have you thought about doing it this way? So it's really quite annoying when people come up to my team and say, have you thought about this? Or why aren't you doing it like in this way? So I do try to challenge that. And I always try to push back and say that operations is a formal route into attractions. And operations is a valid subject. It is a strategy, and it is something that we are good at. We're not just good at putting some signs out and making sure that the tensor barriers are, in the right place at the right time.
I wonder as well sometimes whether that's an indication of how much we value what are seen as, and I hate myself for saying it out loud, but softer skills.
Yeah.
Skills of understanding, skills of taking care of, skills of hospitality actually tend to get undervalued. Just because people do think, well, everyone can open a door and everybody can serve somebody, but not in the same way. And I do think that operations suffers from that sometimes, in that people really underestimate actually what a skill being hospitable and friendly and nice and giving an experience is as a whole.
Absolutely. And also, I think you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. And I also say that operations isn't just about unlocking the door at the beginning of the day, saying hello to 5,000 people, then locking the door at the end of the day. There is so much else that goes on that, like the little duck legs that are going, the swans swimming along, the duck legs are going. And I think that actually maybe it's just really complimentary that the team in all of their guises are doing such brilliant things that we don't actually realise the detail that goes into getting everything moving, to get a place open for the day. One person goes sick and that's it, the whole roster has to be redone, and it has to be redone in 5 minutes before we can open. Or something, that something doesn't arrive for the shop and we have to change the whole display, and we have to change it in 5 minutes before we open, because everything has to look nice in order for the visitor to want to spend. The water stops working in the cafe, and that's really important too, but no one else ever sees that. They just see the churn happening.
Yeah, like I say, maybe it is a case of the better you are at it, the easier it seems. And
we do it too well. We have to be really rubbish. And
the day that you don't turn up will be really, really an experience for everyone else. Yeah,
but I think that also says, when things go wrong, everyone notices in operations because we're front and centre. If someone forgets to send an invoice out, maybe 2 or 3 people might know about it. If someone forgets to, I don't know, do something else back of house, 1 or 2 people know about it. If we forget to open the front doors, if the ticketing system isn't working, if the marketing hasn't been done, if the security team turned, everyone knows about it, and everybody has got opinion on it and why that's happened. So, but I think the other big thing, the other challenge, and I was talking about this, I'm also just about to become chair of Charles Dickens Museum, so I'm on the board of trustees there. And we were talking about some of the challenges they're having. And it's because Cindy, who's the director there, was thinking it was something that was exclusive to her because it's a small museum. And it's absolutely not. It's about resource, and it's about people. And it's about just not having enough money and enough things to do all of the stuff that we want to do, and to do that well. And again, going back to what we were saying earlier, there sometimes just isn't enough emphasis put on the kind of the operational side, the behind the scenes side. It's all about ROI, that return on investment. If I give money for this position, how is that, what's that going to get me back income wise? And so I see when I sit on when I go into board meetings, when I go into exec meetings, my role is absolutely to advocate for that day-to-day stuff, to make sure we're getting the money coming in, to do the really boring behind the scenes things that nobody sees happening, or making sure we've got the right FTE count, to support the team, because otherwise it's really exhausting being front facing. It's really exhausting being the only person doing marketing for an organization, or having reduced resources.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time, you know, we've seen in the past few years a number of attractions that have been very much led by technology, or led by, they're not, and with very, very small front of house teams.
Yeah.
And almost, you know, the absolute bare minimum you can legally have to open a building. Yeah. And actually, it's really hard to sort of say what return on investment those extra people give you. But I think all of us would recognise, if we go into an attraction that is understaffed or has very few staff, actually you will feel it, even if you don't necessarily, you can't kind of put your finger on what it is that you're feeling.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been to attractions where it's obvious you need more staff, and it just feels, I don't know if it feels empty, it just feels like there's a strip back, and it's such a big shame. But you know, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. You know, people, resources, we have in operations, we have a massive drive in our staff. We love what we do and we want to do it amazing, but we know that money is limiting us to do that. But we're quite creative individuals, and we will find a way of doing what we need to do, for both our staff but also our visitors coming through the door.
And that's potentially part of the challenge, isn't it, that because we're so creative, because we have to be, that we spend all of our time creating ways of getting around these little reasons. Well, we can't have a person over there, so we'll have to do it in this way, or we'll do a guided tour instead. We spend so much time doing that actually we're not pushing back enough and saying we just need that extra person, we need that extra role, we need whatever it is. And I suppose that's what I definitely see. You know, leadership is about making sure that I am showing the team how much I value them, but I am also pushing back as much as I can with my peers and saying that we need to get the resources in, because what I don't ever want people to come to a place like St. Paul's and think I didn't have a nice time, I didn't make a good memory, because there wasn't enough people there to support me, or you know, the person at the front was clearly really tired and really stretched, and I was queuing for a long time. So I just want to challenge the assumptions that you don't need to have all of the people doing all of the things. I want to make sure that people feel that that across the board there is a return on investment that sometimes isn't always tangible.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for that. That's a fantastic conversation regarding that question. We're going to change it up a little bit, and this is my crystal ball question.
Oh,
I know. And I just want to find out about your job specifically. How do you think that's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you think technology is going to enhance that experience, or is it going to enhance the experience with your particular role?
I was talking about this the other day, actually. I was out to lunch with a couple of colleagues from different organizations, and we were talking about things like AI and what that might mean for us. And I'm personally terrified because, you know, Terminator, Judgment Day, it's all going to end really badly.
Well, you're still thinking Indiana Jones. We can't get this is it, but the link between Indiana Jones and Terminator is huge, you know.
Yes.
A very big timescale.
No, a very big timescale, but I'm still terrified by AI. But I think, you know, the way that we all pivoted during the pandemic, that move from over to digital engagement, how everything suddenly went online, and I don't really see any of that being stripped back, to be honest with you. I think we're still looking at our digital offer, and we're still looking at how we can engage people in different ways so they're not crossing the literal threshold. And I think there's a whole conversation there around what value there is in that, and if they're not coming to us, are we still engaging them in the right way? Is that still enough? And I think that will be the crux of some of the conversations we'll start to have in the next couple of years. But one of the things I always, Bernard from Alva always says that people want to stand on the spot where it happened, where history happened. I don't think we'll ever move away from that. So I don't see my role, the role of some of my team members, becoming too strict back, because I think there will always be that desire for that more visceral engagement, that memory making, that magic moment. But where I can see it moving ahead is, as I say, things like digital engagement, and whatever digital may look like in 5 years. I can't even imagine, because it's just so different to what it looked like 10 years ago. So maybe it's the boring stuff like, databases and strategy and all those types of things that will take away a lot of the bigger macro conversations that I'm having. But I also think it will be things like access and how people can access various areas they can't get to. So, for example, at St. Paul's, if you can't get up to the galleries, there's no other way of seeing what the view is. And potentially there's a whole AI digital piece there that we could put a project we could put into place. And maybe in 5-10 years' time, I won't be looking at a £300,000 project. I'll be looking at something that much cheaper and much easier to put into place. But I think, and I might be wrong in saying this, so come back in 5 years, come back in 10 years and tell me I've got it wrong. But I think we'll always need humanity, and we'll always need the types of skills that we need in the types of buildings and attractions that we're in, looking after the fabric of the building, understanding the nuances of a historic building or a historic site, and understanding the nuances of people. I don't think people will stand being met by a robot scanning stuff in the whole time. Really don't like it. I went to the airport the other week. I just flew off to Dublin for the weekend, and I didn't really engage with anyone. I just zapped my e-ticket in and then zapped out. I didn't like it.
Hilarious, because that's a dream airport for me.
Really? No, see, yeah. But I'm old school. I want a stamp in my passport because I want the romance of saying, like, I was here, I was there. So that breaks my heart, is I've got all these empty pages, and that's not right. They should be stamped. But also I actually quite like that idea of just saying hello to somebody, being part of something, being part of that humanity, which is it's just me. I think I'm just a people person. I like being around people.
Oh, and I was having this discussion, outside of the attractions, but still within leisure. We were talking about, one of my friends went to see Taylor Swift recently. And I will say that's possibly the first time Taylor Swift has ever been mentioned on this podcast. And I intend that to be the last time we ever talk about Taylor Swift.
She's a good pop act. She's got good pop.
I'll let you have that one. But my point was about they've had this huge, they're in the process of this huge tour. It's clear that you could sell it 1,000 times over, people would still go. But my friend was saying, I was so there, and I was so in the moment, and it was 3.5 hours long, that actually there's some parts of it I don't remember. There's some individual songs that I just can't, they're not in my brain because it's so overwhelming. And I said, I do think there is a space for, if you've been to a gig, I don't need a fancy visual version of it, but I'd really like it if someone just recorded it and I could watch it back maybe a year later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that song.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, because I said, I think a lot of the conversation we have is about, if people get the digital version, they won't go to the physical version. And I think, Bernard is correct. No, people want to stand on the spot. People want to be in a room with 75,000 other people. But there will always be a want for doing something that's, people might not be able to get into a specific area of St. Paul's. They can't see a specific view. There might be areas of St. Paul's that, it's physically not safe to put people in, but you'd like them to see it and to be able to access it. And I do think you're right, that you'll never replace the physical, but wouldn't it be great if we could enhance that instantly?
Yeah. The conclusion we came to is it would be something like ABBA Voyage, and it would be like you could be at it standing in St. Paul's, but actually be in, the old St. Paul's or something, or be there during the fire or something like that.
Yeah. Now we're talking. Right.
I mean, obviously we're talking. But I think I would like to see, Terminator Judgment Day aside, I would like to see AI supporting us in our ambitions, and AI being something that enhances, as you say, all the experiences that we have.
I think that's a brilliant answer. I just want to kind of add on to what you're mentioning is about our staff as well, because kind of this next generation coming in, it's all about digital.
It is, yeah.
You know, they're immersing with all these devices and stuff.
Yeah.
But in our kind of world, we're not operating in that kind of way. So how do you think we kind of blur them lines between having a really cool, unique visit experience, which is kind of touchy-feely, but also that familiarization of the digital that they know and grown up with?
I mean, God, I don't know. It's the short answer. I tell you what, that I was at a really good event the other night, which was hosted by Digital Radish, and there was Selby Anderson, and there was a couple of other digital marketing companies there. And I was invited by a friend of a friend who works in marketing and has massive budgets. And I went along and I said to her, you know, there's almost no point me being here because my marketing budget is tiny, and I'm going to talk to these people and they are going to be talking about stuff that's, you know, like 300K's worth of investment before I've even left the house. And two things occurred to me. One is that there is a huge amount of digital stuff that's going on out there, that AI is taking off and engagement is taking off. As you say, really young people in their early 20s who have grown up with all of this, they're saying, oh, there's this, we can push it this far and we can push it even further and then keep going some more. So having conversations with those people was blowing my mind, because there's stuff going on that I didn't even conceive, like, you know, virtual restaurants, or this conversation about, we take corporate hospitality under my team. We take a picture. Here's a table with 8 people. Here's a table with 10 people. Here's your printed brochure. We could maybe send it to you on a PDF format. My goodness, no, actually, you can fly a drone through. You could do AI technology. You could pick your people up, move them around. There's these whole packages and programs now where it's not static in the way that we're used to. So they're moving on a pace over here. And then I think, well, how do we run to catch up with that? And to a person that I spoke to, everybody said it doesn't matter that you don't have the resource, because we would love to talk to you or support you because of who you are. And I think that sometimes we forget, we sit there going with a poor cousin, with poor relation, we can't keep up. Actually, we forget that we have the kudos of being the people that we are in the buildings that we are in the attractions that we are. And sometimes it's just a little bit more about that B2B scenario, isn't it? It's about getting out there and networking and making those connections. And I don't need to have that £500,000 whatever investment. What I do need to do is say, let's come around and talk about how we can work collaboratively together and support each other. And yeah, maybe we could be a flagship program for you. So I think for young people, it's about us relaxing a bit more and understanding that the world is changing and it's going to change some more, but let's just try and go with it rather than pushing back against it. Embrace the new technologies, she says. Definitely. But be warned about Terminator.
Yes, always be warned about Terminator.
But the one thing I will say, sorry, just about that technology though, what really worries me is I was walking through St. Paul's yesterday. It was so busy, and so many people were plugged into their multimedia guides, which in one hand is absolutely brilliant. They're using their own language, they're having a great experience. Our multimedia providers will be happy. On the other hand, are we just going to be plugged in all the time? You know, do we not just need to unplug and look up? But again, that's probably my age, and I don't like being plugged in.
Yeah, and I think there's a time and a place, like you said, that there's some reasons why you want to, you know, whether, like you said, if that's multi-language or whether that's you don't necessarily, you want to do things on your own time, so you don't necessarily want to join a tour group, but it would be nice to have a bit more information, those kinds of things. But yeah, the kind of technology for the sake of technology, I think is definitely, I think, you know, the recent sort of was it Apple that released their kind of version of virtual reality this week, and then you're sort of like, okay, I'm yet to sort of see people go, oh yeah, sign me up, you know. And I'm sure there are people out there saying sign me up, but yeah, I think, and then on the other hand of that, I had a friend this week who did quite a long flight and spent the whole flight in VR doing other
Wow.
things. And you sort of go, oh, hang on, this guy's living in the future. Like,
Yeah,
you know?
that blows my mind. Blows my
Yeah.
tiny mind.
And you sort of,
Let's read a book.
yeah. Until you see it, you know, I think it's
Yeah.
hard to imagine how could VR be useful. He's like, well, because I'm using this time on the plane to do something that's actually, you know, relaxing, or I'm playing a game, or I'm doing some work, or, you know, whatever he's kind of doing in that environment, but just while he's on a plane. But yeah, totally blew my mind.
For me, it's stuff that enhances it. So if I could get VR that was actually me being in Wuthering Heights and, you know, watching Heathcliff and Catherine over the moors or something, maybe that would be,
No, it's
I'd sign up for that. Yeah.
So away from Terminator and Heathcliff, who knew we were going to get so many kind of cultural references this episode? Obviously, the current job that you're doing, you've got this amazing building, you've got huge teams, you've got really interesting stuff kind of going off all day, every day. What, if you had to boil it down to, is the thing that you love most about your job? What sort of is the thing that gets you either excited to go in the morning, or you just think, yeah, that's it, that's what got me here and what I love doing?
I love the fact that I work in an extraordinary place, and I have worked in many extraordinary places, and I have worked with many extraordinary people. And whenever, you know, when you introduce yourself to people and they say, what do you do? And I tell them, oh my goodness, St. Paul's, I love St. Paul's, I know St. Paul's, tell me about what you do, what's that like? People never, it's not like saying there isn't like a one-stop kind of job description that people understand what that is. It's something that is completely, it's new to them. And so you spend a lot of time telling them about it. And I think a lot of the time I forget where I work, because I'm not based in St. Paul's. I'm based in this, you know, this very lovely Wren building, but it's across the road, and I'm sitting in these meetings and exec meetings, or in, you know, health and safety meetings or whatever. You get drawn into the minutiae detail and the cogs of what needs to go on. Sometimes you just need to go out and have a walk through the site that you're working in, to say hi to the people who are doing the job. But also just to remind yourself the most extraordinary place you're working in, and to see some of those tourists, just that audible gasp when they walk around the corner and see St. Paul's, or they realise just the vastness of it. And I think I'm just really lucky. I've been responsible for some amazing things, for Roman buildings, human remains, objects that are part of our collective story. I've been responsible for buildings, for keeping them up and running, and I've worked with some really wonderful people who are dedicated to their roles and responsibilities. And I know that I wouldn't be happy if I worked in another environment, whether it was just a normal day-to-day office, or if I worked in an environment that maybe wasn't a historic building, maybe was something slightly a different kind of attraction. What motivates me is being part of that history and being part of these extraordinary buildings. So yeah, I think the best thing is just the building, the stories, the history, kind of going back to what Bernard said, being on the place where it happened, being able to touch bits of old St. Paul's whilst I'm there and go, wow, this was in the Grapevine.
That's so cool. So cool. It's so important to love what you do, your job, you know, because not to go deep, but you know, we've only got one life. Go and enjoy it. You know?
It's true, and I'm really lucky that I have days when it is a slog. I'm not going to lie. I don't like skip in every single day going, this is amazing. There are days when it's a slog. There are days when there are tough decisions to be made, or tough conversations to be had, or whatever, or you're just, you know, going through the motions in a way, I suppose. But on the whole, if you love and care for the place that you work in, and you're surrounded by people who on the whole also love and care, and the fact that you get that reaction when you tell people what your job is, it's really lovely and exciting. And then I get to do some wonderful things, like I'm part of ALVA, part of the, you know, the VE network. We get to go for drinks in wonderful places and have experiences. I've had a drink at the pub at the Tower of London where the beef eaters drink. I've part of the London 2012 Olympics at the Museum of London. I was holding the Olympic flame. Stirling Castle, the night before the Scottish independence referendum, where the pipers piped us out, and we were all just like, don't leave us, this is amazing. The service after the death of the Queen at St. Paul's, these extraordinary moments that I've been part of that you don't get to be part of in other roles. So all of those things kind of keep you going in some way for the less exciting days, shall we say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You just kind of, when you're talking, just bringing back memories of my experiences of working in attractions and museums, and how like I was able to put smiles on people's faces just by the actions, or just what I said, or just being there, just made such a difference on there. But yeah, it's so cool. But as we know, you've worked in some amazing places, especially kind of in London. I've got a last question to ask you. We
Not
could
to
talk.
pick a favourite, is it? Because I can't do that.
No. No.
No.
We can ask you that
I was
question
going
if
to say,
you
it is
want.
now. Of
Clearly,
course it is
it's the Paul's
now.
Cathedral.
Hello, and it's all about your top tips. So
Yeah.
if you can give us 3 top tips of why our listeners should come and work in our industry, which is tourist attractions industry.
I think my first tip is to know what motivates you and then try and stick. So, what we were saying earlier is don't choose something just for the sake of it. Choose something because you think you'll be excited by it, or you think you'll be motivated by it. It'll get you out of bed in the morning, because there's nothing worse than dragging yourself around thinking, I hate this. So choose something that motivates you, but at the same time, be open to different career paths and different ways of working, and also different organizations as well. The job that you get right at the beginning is very, very unlikely to be the job you're doing right at the end. And just understand that you are going to go through fluctuations, and it's good to work in different places, different venues, different roles, because it gives you the experience that you need wherever you think you might want to get to in life. So be open to those things, and be creative with your time and your resource and the people that surround you, because one of the best things about working in the attractions industry is that, as we've already said, we know each other through things like the Visitor Experience Forum, through things like ALVA, through things like, the Association of Cultural Enterprises. We get to meet up on a regular basis and talk about what's going well, what isn't going as well, who's moving where, who isn't moving where. We share information, and we have some really good networks. So if we can encourage younger people to be part of those networks in some way, and understand the importance. I really hate networking. I hate going to like drinks where I don't know people. It's lovely when I know people, I can just go up and start chatting to them. But be open to having conversations. Be open to having conversations with people you don't know, who might work in venues or attractions or in areas that you're not currently open to, because I think once you have those kind of creative conversations, it sets you on very different paths. And we are so lucky to have those networks. You'd never get Tesco's phoning Sainsbury's and saying, what's your top seller, or how was the Easter bank holiday for you? But I know I can phone Westminster Abbey and they'll tell me that, no questions, and vice versa. So yeah, use your resources.
Yeah, I think there's so much strength in our industry between attractions. Like you said, that it's almost silly to see yourselves as competitors quite a lot of the time. Yeah. It's that, we can be competitive, and some of us can have a better day than others, and we all want to be number one, when the Alva listings come out. but it's so much more collaborative than I think a lot of other industries are, and more commercially focused. Definitely.
Yeah, and we are a little bit competitive. We can't be wrong, but actually we obviously, but actually, yeah, as you say, it's much better to collaborate and talk to each other, because therein lies the best of everything. And certainly within all of us, we all move around in the same circles. We end up, working at various the same types of places. We all know each other, and it's a really supportive environment. So if you want to work in the attractions industry, get to know the people and take advantage of that almost kind of pastoral family mindset that we seem to have, and support each other.
That's brilliant. Right, so everybody's going to want to chat to you now, Sandra. Everyone's definitely going to ring you up and ask you how the bank holiday's been. Now you've said it. How was half term, Sandra? So if people do want to get in touch with you, if people wanted to find out more about you, where would they be heading? Where would they look?
You can have a look at LinkedIn. I'm on there, Sandra Lynes Timbrell. I'm on Twitter under SLT Heritage, and then obviously at St Paul's Cathedral. as well. So you can look up at the on the website. And I think my email might be there.
Excellent. And obviously we can find you most days in St Paul's Cathedral, or
in St Paul's Cathedral or the
chapter
chapter house next door. Yeah. No, seriously. I mean, even with everything like working from home, I work from home 1 day a week, but most weeks I'm in 4 days for various reasons. I like going in, but also the majority of my team are going in. So I don't particularly want to be sitting
it's difficult. It's difficult to do a job in an attraction, I think, from home, when, especially an operational job where, you know, the physicality of the building is such a big part of the role.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of the conversations we're having are sometimes about the operations. You just need to be there and point at the things that you're talking about rather than doing it kind of
point at the sign that visitors will never read.
It's strangely, that's one of the emails that was going on, and we were earlier before I came on, and we just decided we were going to go to the place and point at the sign, because as I was telling people, the signs go in the wrong place and people will notice, and they will go the wrong way, and it will mess everything up, despite what other people think.
Amazing.
Leave that conversation there, shall we?
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And we've I didn't think we were going to get so many cultural references, as Anna. I think you definitely won with them.
I should have chucked in a few more.
I know, we definitely have to do it. Well, when we come back in 5 years' time and find out if Terminator has won, we'll get some more in, definitely. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sandra. It has been an absolute pleasure as always, and we'll let you know if Terminator comes knocking.
Well, I think we'll all know then, won't we? So thanks both. Really good to chat to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Brown Sign Project. A massive thank you needs to go out to our season sponsors, which is Staff Savvy and Retail Integration. This is a wrap for season 4. So a massive thank you goes out to all of you for listening and sharing our podcast to the wider world.
We'll be back with a new series in 2024. So if you've got an interesting career story you'd like to share, please get in touch.
The Brown Sign Project was edited by Paul Tyler. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Brown Sign Pod, and you can find us on LinkedIn.